So, with the anxious wait for the results over, successful matriculants now head for tertiary institutions, while some hope to jump straight into the job market. Of the 455,000 learners who succeeded last year, more than 166,000 obtained bachelor passes. But for those who have not obtained them, and for the many who choose not to attend the big universities, what is the next move? Well, Dr. Felicity Coughlan is an educational expert and a director of the Independent Institute of Education. She joins me now. Felicity, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
As we speak, thousands of matriculants are now digesting their results. Thousands more may have not had their desired outcome. How does that influence what their next step is?
I think that the thing that people have got to get their heads around is that supply and demand are not matching.
Yeah.
And you then have to make some tough decisions about what you're going to do next. We've done our young people a huge disfavour. I even saw in your intro we talk about attending the big universities as if that is the only option. We don't do a lot at school level or anywhere else to talk to students about vocational training or the private sector or entrepreneurship. And so the really big thing that people have to do right now is to lift their heads up and look beyond the 23, 25 public universities and look at what the other options are, because there are many.
Okay, when you look at that, you look at FET colleges, for example, some of them perceivably don't have the reputation that one would imagine they should have. This is among the public. What happens there? Because I would imagine some of these institutions do offer the skills which are scarce out there in the real industries. But it really takes some convincing for the students on that one, does it not?
Well, it does. It takes enormous convincing because our social discourse is degree or nothing. So we talk about people doing vocational training, and there are many FET colleges that are functioning really well, and we only ever talk about those that are not functioning. So our social discourse is degree or nothing, and therefore this is a second choice. And it's very hard then to say to a young person, look, have a look at X, Y, or Z FET college or X, Y, or Z private institution, because our messaging is so much about, if you didn't get into degree study, you've made a mistake. So we need to, not only with the individual student, but we need to change the way that society views the other options and change the way we speak.
Okay, and of course there is that bunch and that bracket of students that say, well, I'm not getting into tertiary education at the moment, I'm jumping straight into a job. Like it or not, the reality is there. But then they are confronted with an unemployment rate youth-wise of around 36% unemployment on the youth level. I mean, it's an issue of the economy not being able to absorb them, or how important is the approach to those jobs just leaving matric?
Well, I think it's a combination of those, because obviously businesses under economic pressure are not employing as many people, and also what they're looking for is that people that can hit the ground running. Yeah. So it's what the young people are putting on the table, and our advice always to them is you have to find a way to differentiate yourself, because there are, as you say, hundreds of thousands, not just thousands of people looking for work, and getting thousands of applications for individual positions is not unusual. So you have to find the one thing that can differentiate you, whether it's having volunteered somewhere, it's leadership positions at school. Right now, especially for those who haven't written, but even for those that have, what is the one thing that makes you stand out? What is the thing that makes you different?
Let's go back to the colleges and talk about the importance of identifying those scarce skills in the country, which you perhaps may not need a doctorate for or a bachelor's degree.
In fact, you absolutely don't.
The fact of the matter is there are scarce skills out there. Do you think students are aware enough to actually take that approach?
Now, our experience at the Independent Institute of Education is that teachers and schools replicate themselves. So people only tell young people about the things that they know. So we're encouraging young people to use the power of the internet and social networks to find out about career options they're not being told about at school. You can't blame schools. People talk about the things they know. But what's out there is so much wider, so you shouldn't be taking your basic career advice only from school.
All right, let's talk about this phenomenon of a gap year. I mean, it might be difficult to digest given the fact that we're having such an economically tight time at the moment with interest rates going up. You have inflation moving in one direction as well. So one would imagine a gap year, a no-no. Nevertheless, you still have students that choose that. There are some cautions there, are there not?
There are massive cautions there. Our particular concern with the gap year, first of all, is economically, that you're a year behind everybody else.
Yep.
Secondly, let's be blunt, a gap year before you study is something that is only available to the upper middle class, and it sends very strong messages into the workplace about your dedication, etc. Our feeling is that if you need a gap year, it's probably best to take it after graduation and to then volunteer during your gap year in what you've studied. So in other words, even if you're not in a profession that requires community service, that you in fact perform some form of community service yourself. If you have to take a gap year, say you only applied for engineering and you didn't get in, then I think the important thing is, back to our earlier conversation, is to use the year to differentiate yourself. And loafing around doesn't differentiate you from anybody else. So volunteer, work part-time if you can, do something during the gap year that enables you in 3 years' time to say to a potential employer, this is why I'm different.
Yeah. I want to end off by actually just touching on something that had a lot of emphasis this year. That's the second chance phenomenon that was brought up. Of course, there are many of those that have not succeeded in Matric, not made the pass. But we've seen this year from the Education Minister to all the other authorities saying that it doesn't end there, the door does not close. There are options for you to still either get that pass in the next year or choose other options. And I think that's very important to those students.
I think it's enormously important, but again, I think one has to be realistic about what you're chasing. Because to take a second chance option to chase something you shouldn't have been chasing in the first case means A, the classes are going to be fuller, and secondly, you're going to get disappointed again. Yeah. You have to be honest with yourself. The fact that you didn't get 80% in maths, so you didn't get into engineering, I wouldn't try it again. I would look at something else within the mathematical disciplines or within engineering. You have to be realistic, and trying over and over again is not always the solution for everybody.
All right, Felicity, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.